endless. As long as it's interesting,
The
you
bylines
can
are cool
keep,
too.
yeah, you can keep writing and adding more material, and that's a great thing about it. Actually, you've got your 2-minute broadcast piece, but then someone can go in and get more and more and more with hyperlinks in every story. You can go as far into the story as you want to. It's brilliant and genius. And when I started in this business, I never imagined that people could basically become an instant expert in almost every subject.
And look at next issue, for example. 10 years ago, who thought you would have access to 150 magazines for $14.99 a month? And then when you click on those, you see the print edition, and then you go online. Yeah. There's all this bonus material because they're not restricted.
Which day CBC Calgary started? Which day CBC Calgary started?
The actual
date? October 1st. Our 50th anniversary is Wednesday.
I'm proud to tell you I actually wasn't here.
I wasn't here either.
I wasn't alive either.
But I wasn't in the building.
Did you hear what he just said? I wasn't
Neither of
alive
us
like
were.
I
That's what I meant.
Okay, it is also my 50th anniversary.
was. Is it? Well, happy birthday.
There'll be cake later.
I came to Canada on September 20, 1964.
There you go, see?
Well,
nice, and we got your cake, so that's fantastic.
Where did you come from?
I came from it was Pakistan, then it became Bangladesh.
Question?
Yes, I have a question. How do you guys pick your own B-roll? Like, let's say, scenes from a specific news story before it goes on air for public coverage. How do you guys do that?
Explain B-roll first, though.
Okay, so B-roll is basically the pictures in a television story, and it's a sort of an old-fashioned term, but we keep going. It used to be back in the newsreel days. There was the A-roll, which was the voice track, and then B-roll, which was the picture. So A and B, and they roll together. That's the history of it. And now, what's the question? How do we pick it?
How do you pick your B-roll? How do you pick your pictures?
Depends on how much time you have.
Yeah, it does depend on how much time you have. I really try and screen all my footage. And you pick the stuff that demonstrates the script the best, because, you know what I mean, that sort of reinforces the script, the idea, that shows people what you're telling them. Or sometimes with pictures, they're so strong that you don't have to tell people what they're seeing. Yeah. You can do some interpretation and analysis of what is saying. This is the strength of television, and this is, you know, why I love it. When you have a TV moment, a great picture, a great scene, there's nothing more powerful. Every single one of you gets it in a matter of 2 or 3 pictures. You know, and I get to punctuate with a few words that just hit it home.
Nothing more powerful than a well-crafted radio story with beautiful sound.
Except for a well-crafted television story.
Or a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
About 5 or 6 minutes.
But
Gets to the core of the story.
Yes.
Yeah, but basically you bring something up. We have to make sure that we're not doing something called cross-scripting, which is where you say one thing and you see something else.
Okay.
And
that's pretty much biased, right? So sometimes.
Well, it's confusing. If
it's
you're watching it,
confusing,
you're
but
cognitive
can you
dissonance, right? It doesn't match.
can you make a story biased with visuals? Yep, you can. Sure you can. And just like when I sit down to write a script, I am careful about that. We're careful in the same way with our pictures. We don't want to convict someone on air, you know what I mean? Like by showing the wrong picture if we're talking about a criminal story. We don't want to give the impression that the guy sitting in the audience at the Q&A is actually under investigation for fraud. Which is what, if we showed your picture and said that line, that's what people would say.
That's true, especially also the fact that you're not allowed to mention someone's name that's underage, that's made at criminal office. You're not allowed to do that.
Exactly. Those are very things we have to be super
And
careful.
publication bans.
And publication bans
With the
too.
group cases happening right now. Right?
Sure, yeah. We're not allowed to, there's lots of things that we learn in court and that kind of thing that we're not allowed to tell you until we're allowed to tell you.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, he was saying about his sound stories, or is every sound story replicated online? or not? So like if I didn't hear your story, I might miss that whole thing entirely, or because you said you don't write it, you're not a writer.
Oh, no, I'm not a good writer.
And did you write your own piece, or would somebody else have to do your piece? So I just wondered if I missed your piece, that'd be the end of it.
So I do write my stories. I do every aspect of my stories. So I make the phone calls, and I find the people that are interesting to talk to, then I interview them, and I record them, and then I write the story. But I just don't write print stories. So like I write a script, and then I'll record it. So that's.
But are you asking where it lives?
But
Like
where,
if you miss Erin's story, where would it be once it's aired? Is that the question?
Yeah. So Doug's show is archived quite extensively.
Yeah.
And so if you miss the home stretch, you can go home. And I'll do this. If I'm trying to steal story ideas from their journalists and stuff like that, I'll go back and listen to it.
We call that research.
It's research, yes. So, but for me, I usually file for a couple shows. One's called World Report, and one's called World at 6. And every day, those shows are recorded and put online. You can podcast them as well. But they get kind of lost in the ether after 24 hours. So if you saw a tweet or something about something that was going to be reported on that night and you missed it, you could catch it until like 24 hours later. Does that help?
Yeah. And aside from watching or listening to a show over again, we don't have any control over what sort of, if you can search the internet after, what sort of stays there as an individual story. That's other people.
I saved my favorite ones, so if you want me to please, give me a call.
Aaron, that's right, go to his desk after.
Yeah, come on by. I'll play some for you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm interested, you have to pitch a story.
Yeah.
I visualize a whole bunch of people saying, oh, we need this, let's send Carolyn.
Yeah, that
And we do
happens.
that.
Oh, yeah, that happens, yeah. But yeah, it depends. I mean, for breaking news, they honestly, there's all sorts of reasons why they send different people. Everything from profile as a journalist to location, geographically who's closer, who's available, so-and-so can't go because they have to go here on Thursday, so we'll send this person. So yeah, sure, I mean, I probably wouldn't have been the first person to be picked for Ferguson. I don't actually know how that happened, but it just happens sometimes. Someone wasn't available closer. So yeah, that's what it is. That's how it goes for those kinds of stories. But then the stuff that we generate that is not breaking news, just what's happening today and we should do a story on this, we pitch those to Toronto, to our overlords in Toronto.
There's kind of three kinds of stories, right? There's the breaking news story, like the building's on fire, the water's really high and you can't go downtown, and that's obvious, right? Then there's the agenda stories. Jim Prentice is announcing something again, 10 days in a row, right? So they gotta go out and see what Jim's saying today. So that's sort of the agenda stuff you have to cover off. And then there's the stuff that reporters like to do, which is your sort of creative idea, like Carolyn's got her.
Guess what I heard?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of. Those are the stories that you guys can call us and tell us.
Yeah.
Literally, call me directly. I will give you my phone number. So
I particularly like whistleblowers, if anyone is welcome.
Yes.
So sometimes you guys give us some real good story, but then I want to hear the end. Like I'm always hoping, like 3 days later, you're going to tell me,
Follow. You want the follow.
Can you come to our story meeting on Monday, please?
Yes.
Give us an example and we'll go check up on it on Monday.
He's trolling.
Seriously, I've got nothing.
Yeah, but
Well,
you know what? You're
Jim Prentice is
100%
making your
right.
announcement.
All I can say is you're right. We need to
Jim
do
Prentice is
better.
making an announcement.
More follow-up. We need to do
The
it better.
by-elections.
The other thing too is I think we were sort of trained, myself included, to binge watch television shows on Netflix, and we expect things to be resolved in 60 minutes or 13 episodes, right? And then there's a cliffhanger, and then you wait 10 months, and then you watch the next series. But that's not how life works, right? So sometimes things take a long time to be resolved. Sometimes they're never resolved. We have a situation, a tragic situation, where some people went missing, and we know they were killed. But will that be resolved? Will we get a bow tied around that in this city? I don't know.
like we haven't heard about that case for a long time.
And you haven't heard about
There's
it
nothing to
because
report.
there's
And I
nothing for us
think
to
about
report.
that.
I think this community, a lot of people in this community think about them.
Yeah.
I know I think about them a
Oh,
lot.
Me too.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's one of the ones that,
yeah.
that's one of the ones that you do revisit in your head, and we do that. I know
Yeah.
both Erin and I do
We
it.
check in, but you know, if there's nothing to advance, if nothing's happened, that's tragic. But I don't know, you know, there's not much we can do with that.
We go to the court appearances.
Yeah.
Our crime reporter, particularly Megan Grant, will stay in touch with the police on that one a lot, and you know,
Things
and
don't always get resolved.
no, hopefully that one will.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
How often do you file a story? Let's see, on the national they have, what, 15 stories, let's see, and it just doesn't cut it that night and just hits the edit room floor?
It happens. How often does it happen? I'll tell you, they are fairly skilled at the beginning of the day. I mean, how often does it happen that we get sort of 3/4 through doing the story and then they drop it? Not that often, maybe once a month sort of thing. They're fairly skilled at sort of knowing early what's gonna work and what isn't gonna work. But also that's our job to say to them, look, this isn't coming together the way that we had envisioned it, and know when it's time to sort of move on for the day and maybe revisit it later, whatever. I mean, so yeah, it does happen. And yeah, it does feel like a waste of time, but.
That goes back to that resource thing too. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of times they can't, I mean, they need to fill their show. Right? So
Local news, it's not
zero
like,
times.
yeah, it's not, if that story isn't working out well.
Yeah, figure out
what you are gonna do. Because they don't have reporters that can't file. That's just not an option.
And radio's, I think because they're like, so the national is like, you know, it's one show at the end of the day, whereas radio is, you've got World This Hour, World Report, World This Hour, World at 6, and then the hourlies, so like it's on every half an hour.
It has more room.
So yeah, like never happens really, unless it's actually totally not a story.
Yeah, it does happen in television sometimes. Not 3 times a week or anything like that, but it does happen.
Anyone interested in knowing about freedom of information? Oh. How do you get access to the stories
In Alberta?
Well,
Lack of freedom of information.
but how do you get access to that material? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what goes on there. So if you're interested in something and you need to file a freedom of information request, how does that work?
It's long and painful and
Costly.
processy. It can be costly. You start with your initial thing, and unless you know if you know a specific document, this is why we like whistleblowers, because then they tell us this date, this document, this date, and we can ask for something specifically. But if you're just asking for a general piece of information, both federally and provincially, it's really difficult, long process, because it goes through so many different things, and they have to legislatively respond within a certain period of days, but then they extend it, and they do extend it over and over and over. I imagine they're pretty overwhelmed too, but it's you want to make sure if you're going to start going down that path that you hope that you're going to, have at least a real chance of a story. We have a unit in Edmonton that basically has at any one given time 100 or more freedom of information, active freedom of information applications at any one given of time. I think I have probably 6 or 8 active right now, and none close to resolution. It's just the kind of thing you do, and you hope at the end of the day when you go through the process that you're going to get that nugget, and that nugget's the story that you wouldn't have known about had we not done it. So.
Yeah, so you remember when I said I wasn't going to give my opinion?
four times ago? Or
Yeah, 4 times ago. So the freedom of information and privacy protection in Alberta especially, but also in Canada, it's a broken system.
Yeah,
it's designed to protect people's privacy, not to allow for access to information. Mm-hmm. There are some positives to that. People's private information should be private. I shouldn't be able to go find out why you went and saw your doctor. But I should be able to find out why Alberta Health Services is firing doctors. and it's very difficult for us to do that, right? I'm not saying they're firing doctors, no one would even say it as a metaphor. So we have Freedom of Information and Privacy, FOIP. We don't call it that in the newsroom. Can anyone figure out what we might call it? There's kids here, so I can't say the first two words. But blank, blank, it's private. And you don't very often get results unless you have, exactly as Carolyn says, you have to know what you're looking for almost exactly before you ask for it. That seems counterproductive to me.
So I got a picture with the cast of Heartland.
She's excited.
I played hockey with
really
him.
Sean
excited.
Johnston is leaving.
I know, I played hockey with him. I scored 2 goals that game. They both went on my shin pads.
Are you going to shave your mustache this season? I know. See you, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Sean Johnston and the cast. Yeah, they're setting a record this year.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to pass Street Legal as the most episodes of any
Apparently
Canadian producer.
4 episodes
Yeah. Sir.
I just have a question, hopefully I can word it correctly for you. I watch hardly any television, but when it comes to watching a newscast, I watch the National, because to me, the National is what TV news is about for me. How do you find the shift of our social media, etc., affecting the way you report? And following up the question for the other fellow who said we never get answers to things, because it always seems when I watch any other show, and I find that CBC seems to be doing that slippery slope of changing towards global cities, sort of that feel of show. How do you find that that's affecting the way you look at broadcasting?
Wow.
He's smart.
That is
I think as a CBC listener, I think that's what we're all affected by. Honestly.
Yeah, no, and you're 100% right.
We don't watch City, we don't watch those, because they're not CBC, but I find it's going that way. I find that.
Do you find it's more sizzle and less steak?
Absolutely.
Is that a fair?
I just like we have to find these fluffy stories to stick in. Nobody wants to stand
Right.
up and actually push the real button.
Listen, I think that I think it's a fair observation. It's a fair criticism. I think it's something we should be super in tune to. And I guess the struggle is this. It's the same one that, I don't know if you were here when we were talking about the, the fact that we can put, the stories from the Middle East online, for example, but everyone clicks on Lindsay Lohan or, Justin Bieber's latest misadventures. And so, I mean, I guess there you go. That's the struggle as a public broadcaster. We know we have to feed you your broccoli. We want to feed you your broccoli, right? Does that mean that comes at...
Put a little cheese on it.
Does that mean that comes at the expense of the brownie sundae? You can tell what I'm craving right now. And that's
she sees the cake.
Yeah, that's literally, and it's a struggle. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, we have to stay relevant. We have to have people watching. We have to do the water cooler stories because that's partly why people tune in. But you're 100% right. We have to preserve
Are we not shifting then towards giving the people what they want versus standing up for?
So you're saying what they need.
Yeah, but when you're beholden to advertising, that's part of it.
One side be what they need. I mean,
we try to balance it. Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
I don't listen to CBC, and I want them to listen to CBC because of that.
Right. So you and I could probably go out for coffee and agree on every single point of this. But there, I guess it's a...
But that's a slippery slope also, because I don't want you to tell me what I need to hear.
Exactly.
That's what happens in certain countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We met at the library, didn't we? I knew you guys.
I think what it is too, because if you look at our show in the afternoon, we're on from 3 to 6. So we have story meetings like these guys do, and people will pitch, okay, I think we should do this, this, and this, right? Breaking news, agenda, and then it's what are people talking about? Because we look at that 3 hours as, it's like a newspaper. Some people want the business section, some people want the sports section, some want arts and entertainment, and some want the front section. We get that. But we also know that it's like a magazine, right? There needs to be some, we call them release points, because if it's all serious, you know, we don't want to have to send everybody, you know, antidepressants in the mail.
The one
So, you know, there's got to be some lightness to it too, right? I mean, life is balance. I mean, you're here because your kids want cake, and which we're almost there, so don't worry about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
You just blew it.
Just what? Cake? There's cake. So we're always fighting that battle.
But we are fighting it, but
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, because what you're saying is like it's a slippery slope when you start programming to the, you know, to the fluff. All of a sudden, the hard news, the real news, and important analysis of what's going on in your community and your world can easily fall to the wayside. And we have to, I don't think that there's a story meeting that happens on any single day in the CBC that doesn't touch on that issue at one point or another.
And there's healthy debate about it too.
There is. I feel
that
exactly the same way you do. We need to build a fortress around really important news, and then we can, I love entertaining and light news and features and stuff like that, but I also know that I need to know what's going on in the rest of the world, and it's hard.
In defense of the CBC.
I'm not
No,
criticizing the CBC.
not that. Just to your point though, I think the story selection can often be similar across the different stations,
Yeah.
but the way we address them. So, you know, Doug can talk for 7 minutes to one person about a story, and then talk to another person for another 6 minutes about the other side. Like, that's unheard of. That's half of a local news broadcast. I know our local supper hour show has a political panel on Thursdays, and they talk to people longer than we have the At Issue panel on the national, which
And
is
you know what?
must-watch television.
That just
right?
makes your point right there. That At Issue panel
Yes.
is the most watched political
Yeah.
panel in the country.
Because it provides
so people
context.
do want it. We just have to make sure that we're giving it to them in a way that they want, as opposed to shoving it down their throat, like your concern is, right?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. The national to me is this balance, but it's the fact
sliding
that we're
in your
doing all
opinion?
these other little shows all the time, having those things.
Fair.
No, that's okay.
Fair point.
The reason I'm looking at my watch is that someone's talking in my ear right now, and I've been given the wrap sign because we're 10 minutes past where we were supposed to be with Erin and Carolyn, but that's because you're asking such fantastic
they are
questions.
really good questions.
And they're going to hang around for a few minutes after this, and if you have a story idea,
Come to me this Monday.
Come to me with story ideas?
that can be done on Monday.
I'll answer you one question for every piece of cake.
Carolyn Dunn, Erin Collins, two of our best reporters. Celebrating our 50th anniversary of this, and we're so glad that we can do it in this format, and that you have access to people that you normally wouldn't have access to. Please, the cake is going to be served in about 5 minutes from now. But in the meantime, if you want to sit on the set, get a picture, you know, doing the news, or go over to the green screen. Is Vicki still here? Probably not, but you can fool around in front of the weather station there as well. If you have any questions for any of us, by all means, come on up, and we're willing to answer them. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much for coming.